That's awesome. So first of all, it is really amazing to be here at WashU in St. Louis. We have a really warm welcome for you. We have great hosts. There's a lot of hospitality that we found here. And just as Meryl shared with you in her welcome, I want to acknowledge that on our board of directors that we include students from around the country. And one of those students, Josh Yudkin. Where's Josh? In the back? Where? Way back. Is a student here at WashU. He's one of our hosts. He helps us make decisions for our board on your behalf, and we're glad that you're all here. You really can't do this kind of work without some kind of partners that help you make this thing possible. And I'm lucky to have a real special one who came in all the way from shtetl called New York City, my chair and partner, Tom Blumberg. Please welcome him. You know, Tom comes from a successful business background, and in our partnership, we like to talk about the different elements of management and teamwork that make any enterprise successful. And one of the things that we talk a lot about is the issue of risk. And I want to talk to you a little bit about what I think that means, both for you and potentially for the time you're here with us. So let's talk about risk. Anyone that studies grammar, anyone know the root of the word risk, where it comes from, what language? It's actually, I'll give you a hint, it's where Meryl just told me she spent the summer studying this past summer. Just came from Italy. Risk comes from the word risicare, which sounds like, an Italian sports car, something really risky. In reality, risk translates in many, many different languages. And indeed, it's probably the case that for many of you, in making the decision to come here, there was risk involved with that because you didn't know exactly what it was about. And we want to honor that decision that you're here so that you can make the most out of the few days that you're with us here in St. Louis. At the same time, for a lot of you, there was actually very little risk in your getting on the plane and coming here. You're thinking, oh, St. Louis, it's a nice city, it's where school starts, can't be anything real bad, Jewish conference, other students from lots of interesting places. And so for you, perhaps, it wasn't a big risk. But what I want to suggest for everyone here is that what's really important is that no matter what level of risk you took before you got here, with the program that we put together, I'd like you to leave all that behind, and I want you to get outside of your comfort zone, because that will really determine how much you can get out of the week that you're with us here. We're going to do some things that are going to frankly push you. They're going to push you about yourself, your own self-confidence, and your own identity. We're going to ask you some big questions, and we hope that you're going to stay in that conversation with us, unintimidated by the nature of the inquiries that we're making, and the fact that you have new friends or people who you've known previously from back at campus that you're going through this journey with, again, at the same time. So let me tell you what I want to do by way of introduction. I know you've just gotten off planes and you're schlepping from the airport and it's really hot and you're schwitzing. Do I even want to translate any of this? No. You know what's going on. You know how you're feeling. If not, the person next to you is feeling that way. So here's what we're going to do. I want to be very transparent with you about why I'm here. So I'm going to tell you 3 personal stories from my own background. And then I want to tell you 3 stories about students who I've met working with Hillel. And then we'll explore why it is that you're here. So here are the 3 stories. You heard from my background that as an undergraduate, I was at the University of Miami. And the truth is, I was a Judaic Studies major and a political science major, and I really started to find a passion in college that I did not know about earlier. As I was reading in my formal studies and finding out more about Jewish history, Jewish civilization, I basically started really falling in love with the stuff that I was reading about. And so when I learned about this opportunity, our campus radio station, WVUM, the voice of the University of Miami, had a couple of hours of what they call public service programming. And I found out that there was an opportunity that I could inherit a bunch of records. So I created a radio show called the Sunday Morning Simcha. Now, the Sunday Morning Simcha was on at 8 a.m. on Sunday morning. And that was my opportunity to go into a radio booth, put on the earphones, look around me at all the album covers on the wall. You guys know what album covers are? Sort of like, you know what records are? Put it inside the cover. Okay, so we would be covered with all of these long hair bands and classic rock bands and disco bands all over the walls. This was an alternative rock station on the campus that was actually started in a dormitory until the FCC said, no, you actually have to have a license to do this. They made a deal with the university and they put it as an official campus radio station run by students. So I got my 2 hours, and here I was at 8 o'clock in the morning with absolutely none of my friends awake, let alone listening to anything I was doing on the station. But for me, it was an opportunity to explore and to really celebrate the stuff that I was reading in the books. I was learning about Yiddish life and music. I was learning about Ladino. I was learning about contemporary Israeli music, rock and folk music that was coming out of Israel. At the same time, running over to the news chamber and hearing about the headlines that were happening in the Middle East at the time, which were really of great concern to me. As well as the issues of the day in the Cold War and the Soviet dissidents and refuseniks that were being denied personal and religious freedoms. And so for 2 hours every Sunday morning, I would get on the radio station, and although none of my friends were awake and none of them were listening to the radio station, I had a loyal listenership of 8 people, all over the age of 85. From South Beach, we called them the Bubby Brigade. So Bubby Brigade and I had this thing going. They loved me, and I loved them. And we would talk, and we'd share stories, and I'd play a tune. And sometimes they would cry, and sometimes they would say things in Yiddish that I didn't understand, and I would cry. It was a special time. And the truth is, from that period, I recognized something that was really important that I later came to learn, which you saw in the opening quote. If I am not for myself, who will be for me? We learned from the namesake of this organization that identity is very much about being honest with yourself. And unlike all of the peer pressure of high school and sort of going with the herd, going with the crowd, doing what's supposed to be in or cool or whatever, I realized and was empowered sitting in that booth that it didn't actually matter that this isn't necessarily what was exciting and interesting to all my friends. This was exciting and interesting to me. And I needed to explore that. I needed to own that. And it led me to do really interesting things in college, including study during my junior year at Tel Aviv University and explore that music, what was behind it. And it really was a meaningful way for me to open up a piece of my own identity that I simply did not have growing up through high school. And at the same time, I recognized that all of those important issues to me of the day that I was talking about with the Bubby Brigade, that I was actually having no impact at all by talking to those 8 ladies each Sunday morning. But I recognized this was important for me. So I turned it over to another guy. He actually emailed me recently, and living out in California now, and ensured the continuity of that program. Because it was something that was important to me. I saw it place an important value in the Jewish community and those that we were serving, and passed it on to someone else who had, for his own reasons, a desire to be in that radio booth on Sunday mornings and continue something that was really important. I want to share a second story now, which comes from after college. At this point, I decided, as a result of my work in the Soviet Jewry movement, learning about the importance of human rights issues at the time that really spoke to me, that I needed to do something in law school, which was not just go work in a law firm. And I found that there were other students from other universities that had similar interests. So I worked with a group of students, actually 3 different law schools. One at Berkeley, another at University of Indiana, and a third at Georgetown, where I was in law school at the time. And we put together this human rights program. We applied for money for an initiative to basically exchange law students between Kenya, Malawi, and Liberia with law students from Berkeley, Indiana, and Georgetown. And while I had the opportunity, I spent a summer in Liberia in West Africa, monitoring human rights trials, and meeting with various people trying to build civil society at a time of tremendous civil war, for any of you that know the history. So during that period, I had the opportunity to meet a guy who was a student at the time at the law school, who was also clerking for the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of Liberia. And he came from an ethnic minority tribe known as the Mandingos. The Mandingos live in a part of Western Africa that borders several countries and are Muslim. And for me, this was actually the first Muslim person that I had ever met. And I remember meeting him and having this long discussion because the next night I was traveling to a region in a remote part of the country in the bush. And he gave me something that I didn't have going in there. I was basically scared to death. And he assured me and gave me self-confidence about the trip and understood, gave me some bearings as I was going in. So I get to this place. He tells me about this little hotel where Westerners stay at. It was very modest and small. There was a restaurant there. And in the back of the restaurant, suddenly start hearing what sounds to me like Hebrew. I'm thinking to myself, this is, sometimes when you're traveling in a foreign country, you hear a foreign language and you suddenly decide it's something, you walk over and speaking in Portuguese or something else. I walked over to the people sitting at this table, and it turns out they were speaking Hebrew. It turns out that this was actually a team from Hadassah Hospital in Jerusalem that had been sent and is sent every year during this period to this remote place to set up a field unit where they conduct in the bush with very limited electricity and materials surgery for a condition that had been eradicated in the first world countries. It's called river blindness. And literally, this team came in the summer, set up a field unit from which they had experience from the army, brought in people from the village, conducted the surgery in the field, and turned a blind person into a seeing person. And I was so moved when I met a grandparent describe seeing their grandchild for the first time after having the surgery. And it reminded me of the very important lesson that our namesake Hillel also shared with us. It's not enough to only know yourself. If I am only for myself, what am I? And so I gained a new sense of pride in being a part of the Jewish people and being connected to a Jewish nation that with all its tiny little size and with all its surahs and problems that it has, actually thinks about people who have it off worse. And that became a great inspiration for me to then actually go back and spend time during law school in Israel and then live there for several years. My wife and I had 2 children while we were living in Israel. We decided to come back in 2002 after a very difficult period living in Jerusalem. And when we came back, I was presented with my third learning opportunity, which was when I had to choose between going back to the law firm that I worked at in Washington, D.C. for a period of time, or coming into work here at Hillel. You could probably guess which one paid for. So I went home, I learned about the 2 opportunities, I came back, I discussed it with my wife. I asked her what she thought I should do. And she said something really important. She asked me a question. She said, when's the last time you really remember being fulfilled and excited by what you were doing before we were thought back, and I said, you know what? It was when I was in the radio group with the Bubby Brigade, talking about the issues of the day that mattered to me and building with college and then graduate students later on the activism and things that were passionate to us. And so she said to me, that it's a no-brainer. You got to do this, and we'll figure the rest out later. So there are two lessons I want you to draw from that particular person's story. The first, as you go through life, you don't actually have to be that smart to be successful. But it really helps if you marry a partner or have a spouse or partner who is really wise. So, take a look around the room, and get to know people. You never know. By the way, did I mention to you that same girl I interviewed on the radio station years earlier? So you never know. Those are my stories that influenced the lesson that Hillel shared with us. If not now, when? If you identify your passion, and if you are true to your own identity, you understand the world we're living in, the challenges that we're facing, then you have to find the moment to act on them. And I've learned that, and I've shared that, and I think no one understands that better than university students. Let me share 3 quick stories of students who I've met like you during this journey who decided to take risks, to go places that they didn't know they could actually go. I remember sitting with a group of students at Northwestern University one evening. 2 of them, Lexi and Allie, sitting around with Josh Fagelson, their rabbi at Northwestern University. And they had this idea that they should be asking big questions around the table. And those big questions that they were asking were things that it turned out many of their friends were interested in. Their Jewish friends, their non-Jewish friends, people were interested in these big questions and not just going to cakeways. It was counterintuitive, but it was true that there was a real interest in this and that students took ownership of this and created something that then it turned out that students on other campuses were also doing at the same time. They might have called it something else. At University of North Carolina, there were a group of students that created a program there with a similar intention. 3 cups of tea, they called it. And after some incidents that happened on campus, they learned about how to build a culture of conversation and dialogue around important big issues that are happening. And we got lucky that at the same time, a foundation, the Einhorn Family Charitable Trust, said, we like these big questions that are being asked. We think this needs to be something that at Hillel could become part of our curriculum. And indeed, all of you, over the course of the week, will be exposed to this curriculum, the opportunity to ask big questions as a result of prior students beginning this process as well. A woman we met from Scripps College, Ellie Winkleman, had a real passion for the issue of genocide in Darfur. And so she created a program while she was a college student called Challah for Hunger. Anybody hear of that program on their own campuses? Quite a few of you. Actually, Challah for Hunger began to spread almost immediately because Ellie captured something that bringing people together around something that was essentially social on a Friday afternoon presented an opportunity for them to do something fun and social, but at the same time to raise consciousness and raise awareness about an issue that was important to her. And she was able to mobilize, not merely to have discussions, but actually for social change, because each time they met, first of all the money and the proceeds went to support various hunger initiatives, both domestically and internationally. And as a result of that they also said, you know what, why don't we take some political action? Let's write to Congress. Let's weigh in on legislation. So they actually created a meaningful opportunity for people to do something about their concern. Third story. This comes from two students I met at Columbia University when they were sophomores, Ariel Berry and Aharon Horowitz. I heard somebody clapping over there. These guys and a few other students that they were friendly with at the time felt that university professors were teaching Israel in a way that was demeaning and, frankly, anti-intellectual. And they decided to stand up and share that with the faculty members. Well, it didn't go over so well, and then they decided to share it with the administration. And by the time they were seniors, they said, we've been telling this story now for 3 years, and no one's listening to us. We need to figure out a different strategy. So they found some film students, and the film students said, we know how to make a movie. Let's share these testimonials. And when the university they felt was stonewalling them, in the end, they released their version of the events and created a public awareness around their issue in a way that perhaps couldn't have been done without that student input. But that's not the reason I'm telling the story. The reason I'm telling the story is because both of these guys continued after college to think about what they learned from the self-confidence that they had. And in Jerusalem today, they have this idea incubator where they literally invest in projects of young adults and college students that come over, do an internship over the summer, and study social entrepreneurship in terms of ways to impact on the Jewish community, not only in the United States, but around the world. Each one of those stories are true stories of students who ask those questions, who am I? And what are the issues of the day? And when am I going to act on it? And each one of those students could be replicated and is replicated many times over. So I know why I'm here. And I suspect, over the course of the week, if you are willing to take some risk, that you too can have a better understanding of whatever instinct it was to bring you here. Now, I want to encourage you and really give you the opportunity to take some risks and learn some things that you might not have expected would happen. So tonight, what we're going to do is we're going to take you to a place you wouldn't expect. We're going to take you to a junkyard. We're going to take you to a junkyard. You're going to see lots of junk. And you're going to be with all of these students, and you're going to be with almost 1,000 Hillel people, some staff, some students. Some are going to be from Latin America. Where are Latin America students? And some are going to be from Russia, and some are going to be from Canada, and some are going to be from the West Coast, and some are going to be from the Midwest, and some are going to be from Israel. We are going to bring together. Did I miss anybody? Oh, the East Coast will be there too. And New York. Tonight, you're going to bump into these people. You're going to hear accidents. You're going to be schwitzing. You're going to be in a junkyard. Why in the world would we take you to a junkyard? We want to open your minds. We want to push you to think creatively, to get out of the boxes, to think about this university, a different university, the learning opportunities that you have here, the new relationships that you're going to make. Those are the opportunities that we're going to give you tonight. And for those of you that really are ready to take some risk, when you arrive at this edifice, if you look on the outside, there's going to be a really tall scaffolding, and there are walking pathways. It's really safe to do it. I did it last year. If you climb all the way to the top, suspended but anchored, are 2 poles of airplanes that are up there hundreds of feet up into the sky. For those of you that want to take some risk, climb all the way to the top. I've left you a secret message up there. If you get up there and you see the secret message, I'm going to be around all week. We can have discussions about it over coffee, over tea, with our Nalgenes, whatever. I really want to encourage you to take this opportunity to take some risk, to meet the folks here, take advantage of the time. This is your opportunity. At Hillel, we've been doing this work now for over 80 years. We do one thing. We are here, we have brought you here, we care about you. Because our mission is to enrich the lives of Jewish students so that they may enrich the Jewish people and the world. Welcome to St. Louis.